am so proud to be here this morning and having the 46 mamas standing behind me. I just can't tell you how good I'm feeling. They asked me if I'd shave my head, and I'm thinking about it. I'll let you know. I'll let you know about that. But I want to thank the 46 mamas first, St. Baldrick's, who's here, the Max Cure Foundation, and the Children's Cause for Cancer Advocacy. We had a tremendous reception last night. Heard a testimonial from Deborah about her granddaughter, Chloe. You know, this is really what it's all about. This is not about me. It's not about politics. It's about defeating cancer in children. It's something greater than ourselves. I'm just a vehicle. I'm a messenger. I was inspired by Tim and Donna Culver in my district. Their son Adam died from cancer and got me into the cause, the fight. My best friend in grade school died from cancer. Showed up one day, his hair was falling out, he had leukemia. Back then, leukemia was a death sentence. Today, it's not, and that's the good news. But the bad news is there's still many other cancers out there that kill children. It's the #1 cause of death for children in the United States. And we're going to do something about that. We're going to do something about that. I'm very enthusiastic, and you should be too, because we've been fighting this war for years. And Deborah Price, who's sort of the godmother of the cause, and she's not here today, but God love her. She lost her daughter, and we passed the Concord Childhood Cancer Act, named after her daughter, and that appropriated dollars. But it was really a drop in the bucket. What we're talking about today will revolutionize and change the way the drug companies view childhood cancer. And it does it in a way that it incentivizes the drug companies to work on this. For years we've heard them, and you'll hear at the summit, we have a representative from Bristol Myers testifying. You'll hear from them, we can't make any money off these childhood cancer drugs. They're orphan drugs, orphan diseases. And they're right. So what we decided to do is, look, if you put a childhood cancer drug in the queue for FDA approval, and by the way, we haven't had one passed by the FDA or approved since the 1980s. How sad is that? What a pathetic statement that is. And that's what this bill is designed to change. We're going to start having childhood cancer drugs being approved by the FDA. And we do it by incentivizing the pharmaceutical companies. We say, look, if you put R&D, you may not make any money off this, but it's a good cause to save our children. If you put that in the queue, we're going to give you a priority review voucher. And you could take that voucher for any other drug that you're developing, and you get to go front of line with that too. So what is that going to do? What impact is that going to have? It's going to incentivize the pharmaceutical companies to put those childhood cancer drugs in the queue, front of the line for FDA approval. This is going to change everything. And I won't talk. We got the 46 mamas. They want to talk too, and I want to give them time to talk. But I've just let me say thank you to all the advocates, to all the parents. I've gone through the hospitals. I've seen these kids. I mean, it just breaks your heart. The needles, and they're the bravest, strongest characters I've seen in my life, going through a death sentence, and yet the character, they're so courageous. And the parents, and I've heard the story after story. The stories, they vary a little bit, but a lot of them are very similar. We all have similar stories. The names change. But I'm looking forward to the day where I won't have to have a parent come to me and tell me these stories. and the day when I won't have to see these children in the hospital dying. I'm looking forward to the day when we have where we have a cure. Yeah, I saw Neil Armstrong yesterday, first man to land on the moon, and I said last night, of course, 1,000 years from now, we're not going to know anybody in this town, but Neil Armstrong, we're going to remember that name. But when we put our efforts and our mind and our spirit and our soul behind something, a cause like this, we can make a difference. Just like we landed a man on the moon, we're going to have a cure for childhood cancer. That's my plan. This moment would not be possible if I didn't have support for this bill. Nancy Goodman, where are you? I can't take credit for this. This idea is Nancy Goodman's idea. I'm just the vehicle to make it happen. And Nancy Goodman came up with this idea, and she's been working hard over the last couple of years to make members of Congress aware. She's done a fantastic job, not only in the awareness, but getting the support necessary so that this bill, finally the day has come that we're introducing this bill this morning in the United States Congress. And it wouldn't be possible if I didn't have my good friend G.K. Butterfield. Up here you need support on both sides of the aisle. What I love about this bill is the momentum that we've achieved. I got to tell you, this last week, as we shot this bill around, I mean, we're getting support, from all walks of life. Conservatives, liberals, moderates, GK. The momentum is huge, and it should be. This is a cause that nobody can stop, and it's a cause that we're going to win. We're filing this bill this morning. I ask for all of your help with the members of Congress. I look forward to the day when we pass this out of committee, we get this bill on the floor, and we pass it unanimously, bipartisan. In a day where this place is so partisan and so awful, so polarized, this is the bill that can bring members of Congress together, as it should be. And so I'm looking forward to that great day. My good friend GK, I would not be standing here today saying we're going to introduce this bill if I didn't have a partner on the other side of the aisle. We served on the ethics committee together. You don't ask to serve on ethics, you get put on it. But I can tell you, this is a man of great character, great integrity, and I'm so proud to be standing next to him introducing this bill. Thank you.
Good morning. Let me thank you, Mike, for your friendship and your willingness to include me in this very extraordinary legislation that's going to affect so many children across America. It is true that Mike McCaul and I have a long-standing friendship and relationship, even though we sit on two different sides of the aisle. We served on the ethics committee together, and he mentioned that. And when you sit on the ethics committee in that private room and you're supposed to leave your party labels in the hallway, and most of the time we did, you create a bond, you create a relationship. It's just like traveling with members on what we call congressional delegations and visit foreign countries on behalf of our country. There's something about that relationship that creates a bond. So I have a bond with this gentleman, and I thank him so very much. I thank all of you for coming out at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it is true that we were indeed here to 2 o'clock this morning trying to do the people's business. I am a Democrat. I'm part of the sponsorship for this legislation. I represent the eastern part of North Carolina. Those of you who know my state and know where the capital city may be, Raleigh. Well, I represent most of the counties east of Raleigh, the 23 counties almost to the Atlantic coastline. And so it's my joy to be with you today. It's my joy to be the lead Democratic sponsor for this very important legislation. But the two of us are not the only co-sponsors for this legislation. My good friend on my side of the aisle, Chris Van Hollen, is also one of the co-sponsors, but regrettably, he could not be with us today. He is one of the 12 members on the Fiscal Commission that's trying to get our nation's finances under control. Bipartisanship is critically essential. When I was a judge for 15 years down in North Carolina, there was no such thing as bipartisanship. That was my courtroom. I knew the law, I heard the case, I listened to the evidence and the arguments, and I made what I thought was the right decision based on the law and the facts. This is different. This is a legislative environment. And what we must do, and what Mike and I have pledged to each other, we must, as best we can, try to work together on a bipartisan basis in confronting issues such as this. And so I'm delighted that Mike is taking the lead on this. On his side of the aisle is a very special friend, Congresswoman Sue Myrick from Charlotte, North Carolina, who is also not with us today, but she is an extraordinary member of our committee. And while I'm talking about committees, I need to say to you that I am on what is called the Energy and Commerce Committee. This committee has very broad jurisdiction, and this is one issue that is very dear to all of us. As you've heard, this legislation is designed to promote drug development to treat rare pediatric diseases such as cancers, sickle cell diseases, pediatric AIDS, cystic fibrosis, and the like. More than 30 million Americans are affected by rare diseases, the vast majority of which, as you well know, are children. Due to the limited population, drugs developed to treat such diseases yield very limited profits. They yield very limited profits in the private sector, if any at all. As a result, especially in today's economic climate, companies are reluctant to make the substantial upfront investment that is necessary to find therapies to treat these rare diseases. I know that all of us here today agree that whether a disease is rare or whether it is common, the need for innovative and effective treatment is the same. Therefore, we must do everything we can to encourage the development of therapies for all diseases, but especially those developed to save the lives of our precious children. The Creating Hope Act of 2011 will do just that. You know it, and we know it as well. Mr. McCaul has talked a good deal about pediatric cancer, an issue that I know that he cares very deeply about. I too care about cancer. I had a friend funeralized on yesterday at age 51 from cancer, even though she wasn't a child. She had been plagued with the disease for a very long time. Got a phone call this morning that one of my pastors in the district has passed away from cancer. And so we've got to begin to treat cancers at a very young age. And so let me briefly highlight another rare disease that is close to my heart and the community that I represent. And that is the dreaded disease of sickle cell disease. Sickle cell is an inherited blood disorder that affects an estimated 70 to 100,000 Americans. The disease occurs in about maybe 1 out of 500 African American infants and about 1 in 1,000 Hispanic infants. Sickle cell is a very painful disease which significantly diminishes quality of life and shortens the life expectancy of those with the disease. In recent years, progress has been made. Indeed, it has been made. And researchers are hopeful that one day soon we will discover a cure. I am hopeful and believe that incentives such as those provided in this act will bring more attention and resources to the fight against this dreadful disease. Again, I want to thank you for your passion. I told one of the moms just a minute ago, that's one of my favorite sayings when I meet people who are advocates. Thank you for your passion. This is what pushes us to get good things done in this body. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, GK. I appreciate your support. I also want to thank my wife for marrying me. always the easiest husband being in Congress, and we had 5 kids, and but I look at my 5 children, I think, my God, nothing can be worse than if one of them came down with cancer. You're supposed to die before your children. Your children are supposed to die before you. And so these mothers behind me, some have survived, some have not. But I mean, the idea of watching your child die, I can't think of anything harder to have to experience. So Linda's on the board at MD Anderson and chairs the Childhood Cancer Committee. And I'm just very proud. And we've been able to work together on this issue. It's really been a rewarding experience. Before I introduce one of the mamas who's going to give a testimonial, I understand we have a video that we're going to show.
Hello, I'm Dennis Quaid, and I'm here to talk to you about childhood cancer and the Creating Hope Act. Did you know that cancer is the #1 disease killer of American children? More than AIDS, asthma, cystic fibrosis, diabetes, and congenital anomalies combined. 36 children are diagnosed each day with pediatric cancer, and 2,300 die from the disease each year. For those children who are fortunate enough to survive their diagnosis, the vast majority face chronic illnesses and lifelong impairments, including secondary cancers, impaired cognitive and social abilities, heart damage, lung damage, infertility, and impairments to growth and development. Now, despite this significant medical need, pharmaceutical companies have been reluctant to develop drugs for rare pediatric diseases such as childhood cancer because it requires making an investment in products that are unlikely to cover the high cost associated with their research, development, marketing, and distribution. In fact, since the 1980s, only one pharmaceutical drug to treat any type of pediatric cancer has been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Now it is time for the pharmaceutical companies to come to the table and partner up with the public sector in support of patients and survivors whose lifespans are cut short without appropriate treatment. The good news is that there is hope for children with cancer. It's called the Creating Hope Act. The Creating Hope Act provides market incentives for pharmaceutical companies to develop new drugs and treatments for children with rare pediatric diseases such as cancer. Endorsed by some of the nation's top doctors, researchers, and patient advocates, passage of this bill has the potential to improve the lives of thousands of children and their families. I hope that you will join us in creating hope for kids with childhood cancer. Please call your representatives in Congress and urge them to support childhood cancer patients and their families by passing the Creating Hope Act.
Dennis Quaid is he's my neighbor in Austin, Texas. He's my friend, and I've got him on board for the cause. I feel there's a movement afire right now. I feel there's a lot of traction on this thing. And we got a movement that's going to set fire to the country. And this bill is the vehicle to do it. And so with that, let me just, I want to thank the 46 mamas behind me and the stories that you have. And I want to turn the mic over to a special mama who's from my home state of Texas, from Plano, Texas.
Thank you very much. My name is Amy Brenforder. My son Caden was diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor at 2.5 years old. We're one of the fortunate ones because after 1.5 years of treatment, he is cancer-free. But unfortunately, some of these mamas standing behind me haven't been so fortunate, and they've lost their children. We are the 46 mamas, and we're here mainly to say kids get cancer too, and a lot of people don't like to think about it because you don't want to think about children suffering and dying, but that's what we're here to say. We want people to know that our kiddos are getting cancer and they're dying because they're getting hand-me-down drugs from adult treatments, and I'm really nervous, sorry. We just want people to know that we need support. We need support like breast cancer gets support. We need things to go gold in September, because September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. But most importantly, we just want people to know that we're out here and that hair grows back, but kids don't. And so that's why we did what we did. We shaved our heads to show our support, raise money and awareness for our kiddos, and that's why we do it. We do it for the kids. Thank you.
Well, let me just close by saying thank you. Thank you for supporting the cause. Yes, Mike? Cure Search. We're a Cure Search. They didn't give me the program, so I'm going to turn it over to Cure Search.
Okay. Thanks, Congressman. I'm John Lear. I'm the President and CEO of Cure Search for Children's Cancer. And I want to begin by thanking Representatives McCaul, Butterfield, Myrick, and Van Hollen for sponsoring this legislation. I think it's terrific. I think the Creating Hope Act will do a lot of good in incentivizing pharmaceutical companies to get involved in the children's cancer research space. I think we all know that there are 13,500 children who are diagnosed with cancer every year, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that they have the treatments that are going to make sure and guarantee that they can live a full and healthy life. This year, Cure Search is going to give $5.5 million to the Children's Oncology Group, and I see Peter Adamson back there, who's the chair of the COG. But that's really just a drop in the bucket for what we need to do in terms of supporting children's cancer. We need the government's help in bringing pharmaceutical companies to the table, and I think that's what the Creating Hope Act is all about. And I just want to acknowledge Nancy Goodman. I remember meeting Nancy 2 years ago, and she was a true force of energy, and I think she recognized, where things were up on Capitol Hill, and that the best way to do things was probably to incentivize and to put some momentum behind pharmaceutical companies getting involved, working with Congress so that we had a good public-private partnership, and she's really done a tremendous job. And I think really more than me, Nancy Goodman has done
This is my son Jacob. Congressman McCaul, Congressman Butterfield, Congresswoman Myrick, and Congressman Van Hollen, thank you so much for introducing the Creating Hope Act today and for giving kids the opportunity to get the cures they need for their cancer diagnoses. I'm here today because my son Jacob died 2.5 years ago of pediatric brain cancer. Jacob, as you can see, was a beautiful little boy with red hair and a kind smile. But 2 weeks after diagnosis, he went from being a loud kid who loved to play balls to a boy in a wheelchair who had severe cognitive impairments, who had neurological difficulties, who had difficulty controlling his bodily functions. He spent 9 of the remaining 23 months of his life in the hospital, and the rest in and out of clinic. And yet, 2 weeks after Jacob's diagnosis, Jacob's doctors had information indicating that the drugs they were intending to give him would likely not work. They continued with that course of action because there were no alternatives available. In fact, in the past 30 years, Jacob's form of brain cancer has not had a material change in its protocol, and as a result, we have a photo of Jacob. Thousands of kids get cancer every year, and the lucky ones, the hundreds of thousands of survivors, they live with a raft of impairments and often life-threatening conditions. In the past 20 years, the FDA has approved 1 drug for any pediatric cancer. And unless we do something, it is unlikely that more will be developed because, as Mr. McCaul has discussed, the markets for drugs for pediatric cancers are just too small for private industry to enter. If we really care about protecting our kids, We must create incentives outside the markets of the pediatric cancer drugs. The Creating Hope Act does just that. It creates real benefits for real results. I urge all members of Congress to support the bill and shepherd it into law. If you know a child who died, particularly of a condition that should be treatable, you know what a profound impact it has on families and on communities. We should not tolerate the deaths of thousands of children each year and the condemnation of hundreds of thousands more to lives with significant impairment. We should create a world in which children with cancer do not suffer the way Jacob did. We have the greatest researchers in the world. We can do better, and we must try. The Creating Hope Act is one step in that direction.
Nancy, thank you. This is your idea. This has been your dream for years, and now it's happening. And I implore each and every one of you to talk to the members of Congress, as I will be doing. I'm on the whip team, so I'm pretty good at whipping votes. And I'm going to whip this one harder than I've whipped any bill in my career. And I look forward to that great day. I hope we can get you on the floor, Nancy, because this is your bill. When this passes unanimously by the Congress. And so thank you so much for your efforts. Thank you for being here. Mamas, thank you for shaving your heads in solidarity for your children. And thank you all so much for supporting the cause. I appreciate it.